men and going back to masculinity. And so they spoke about this throughout it. And I
This woman
thought that it was interesting. And again, Craig had a lot to say in this episode, but let's see if we can mine through it. I'm trying to figure out exactly what that was. Boys in the media
are higher. And
now, let me preface this. Let me give you all a little bit of the backstory. It was somebody that called in. Matter of fact, you know what? I could just play it. It was a caller that asked a question. And this is the precursor to this conversation right now. All right.
Dive into this topic.
Hi, Michelle and Craig. I have 3 younger brothers and am a new mom to a 1-year-old little boy. What can we do to change the fact that we raise our girls and we love our boys? There is so much dialogue on raising strong, independent women, but how can we raise emotionally intelligent, competent men? I am deeply concerned by the ideology promoted to my younger brothers online. I want to raise a young man who sees through those ideas. How can we energize the discussion around raising young men that want to change these oppressive and even violent dynamics?
So, long story short, Emma, the mother and the sister of several different boys, right, is asking, and I'm going to give it to you from a C student's perspective, what she's basically asking Obama and Michelle and Craig is, how does she raise a boy that sees through the influences of what's happening online from male content creators that are basically taking hold and having a stronger impression on what happens in younger men inside of the household? All right. That is what she's asking. So that's the precursor to this conversation. So I can add that in there. All right. Let me see if we can get there. This is some of the things that was being said now as they had this discussion.
Do we know the parents where you're playing, and so on and so forth?
We see a good example in it in one of my favorite shows on Netflix that has become the topic of conversation amongst a lot of people, particularly in Black homes, is this series Forever, which is a beautiful story of young love in a Black neighborhood. And it is not traumatic, and bad things don't happen.
It's just regular kids.
It's just regular kids, right, that reflects all of our lives in real ways. And I know you watched some of that, and Barack, you are well aware of it. But you know, the show has created a lot of conversation in terms of how do you raise emotionally intelligent boys and what we get right and what we get wrong. Not just among boys, but kids in general.
We watched it as a family. We watched the whole series as a family.
Yeah.
And
if I could pass.
Oh, you guys would have done that. Or you, because
that's the crazy thing Dad would do.
Yeah. But this brings me back to Emma. Emma's trying to raise these boys. And so she's trying to be somewhere between Forever and then the other show that people are talking about, Adolescence, which I haven't watched yet, which it gets into sort of the misogyny that young boys are exposed to,
and the online, you know,
the manosphere.
They're getting their parenting.
They're getting their
online.
Parenting.
They're getting their notions of manhood from extremists.
Extremists.
I thought that this was a compliment personally. I felt like this was a compliment because what they are basically saying to me, and this is my translation of it, is that they are aware and they are paying attention to the things that men that have a huge platform or that have a significant platform are saying and influencing, and our influence online. I don't even necessarily chalk it up to the manosphere, right? Even though there are a lot of guys that have contributed to the conversations that's being had today, I don't chalk it up to the manosphere because I think that sometimes people like a Craig could mislabel, and that is a term that has been created by people such as the Angry Mans and the O'Shea Duke Jacksons and everybody that's contributed to it, and the people that's been having conversations long time about the dynamics of masculinity online and stuff like that. It tells me that guys that are having conversations about the inner dynamics of relationships and what it means to be masculine are having an impact and people all the way up until the president of the United States of America, or the former president of the United States of America, and his brother-in-law and his wife is paying attention and they listening. They're paying attention and they are listening. I would not necessarily put myself in that space. I've never labeled myself as a part of a manosphere. However, I cannot help the conversations, my associations, and more importantly, people categorizing you on their own. You don't have no control over how people categorize you. But what I will say is that I have conversations based off of popular culture. And a lot of that popular culture is the interdynamics between men and women. And I think that men have been emasculated. I think that they've labeled toxic masculinity for so long, and now we don't have a conversation about it. But they're watching. We are the balance. I think that men that have a strong voice, that is not afraid to be truthful, honest, and at the same time be an equal accountability partner, they are the balance to the counterbalance or the imbalance that is happening in these conversations. For so long, women have had the microphones, women have had the promotion, women have had the books, women have had all of the resources, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all of this other type of stuff. And then specifically, they're talking about boys. They're talking about black boys and black young men a lot of times, because you can actually see the label at the bottom. But they're basically saying that a lot of these guys are seeking out insight, information on how they need to be moving as men, and as well as they should. And one of the reasons I believe that they are doing that is because that is a part of who they are, a huge part of their DNA that has been missing in their lives, because so many guys have been raised in single parent households. So many guys have been bombarded in this culture by the feminization of men and the promotion of the alphabet community. So many guys have had or is missing a huge presence of who they are. And even a lot of you guys have had men in your lives, but y'all men, the men that y'all look to as an examples, were henpecked and they were neutered by their wives. And those are the guys that said, happy wife, happy life. And that's why I say that the boomer generation failed you guys. They failed y'all. And so what do? Your natural instinct is to go and find and seek out by default, because you know that this is not who you are. The same way that I knew that I was not supposed to be voting Democrat, but I was, because that is the thing that black people were supposed to do. And I started to seek out information for myself, and I found myself an imbalance between understanding and wisdom. And that is one of the reasons why I defected away from the Democrat plantation, is the same way that men by default go and seek out masculinity. I don't care how sassy he is. I don't care if he was raised in a single mother home. I don't care if you raised baby boy. I don't care if he hood. I don't care if he got a lot of money. I don't care if he a nerd. I don't care if he a basketball. I don't care who he is. By default, you are going to naturally be attracted to and seek out masculinity. It's just the way that it is. And because you guys did not do a good enough job, and our culture and our politicians champion things that wasn't best for men, as a matter of fact, they were against men, what you started to see was his natural affinity. So many guys, a natural affinity being attracted to, and then ultimately taking their advice, sometimes to their own demise, because not everybody needs a microphone, but taking advice from men that taught them and is giving them insight on how to embrace masculinity. And women were so surprised. Oh my God, I can't believe it's such an explosion. Where did these guys come from? Why do they think like this? Why did this, so on and so forth? Well, it's because so many people have been suppressed in their thoughts, and this is what the truth is. They are always going to come back to the thing that God made them to be. Right or wrong? They're always going to come back to the thing that God made them to be. No matter what their life was, they are going to be curious. Why am I not what it is that I'm supposed to be? Because that's just the way that God made you.
Not to divorce that work from some other stuff like men having jobs.
I totally agree. Totally agree. It was not an either or at all.
Exactly. But because part of what happened when we say there aren't a lot of men around.
Yes.
Part of
Jesse says, Anton, ain't it crazy to think the Obamas might be talking about you at home? No, I don't think it's crazy. I think that more people are aware of what we do and the impact that we make. Listen, bro, you would not believe the amount of people that I've been in the room with. And I didn't, you know, when I realized it, when it really hit me was when I was at the conservative ball and then I spent an extended amount of time in DC and I was able to meet with some people and I don't want to say who or what or whatever. And they will tell you, hey, man, I am familiar with everything that you do. I watch your stuff. We are familiar with it. We send it to each other, whatever, so on and so forth. You out and about all the time. People know who you are. People know exactly who you are. They know. They know. They know. And that's when it really set in like, wait a minute. We got motion. We got motion. That's when it really sets in.
Of what happened, and it happened in the Black community first,
And now
but
it's
then
trickling
now
out.
you're seeing it happening across the board. Was a lot.
I know you don't like to hear it though. I know that bothers you. But let me tell you something. You cannot do hundreds of millions of views a year. You cannot have over 1 billion views on YouTube alone, and that's not even including other platforms, and not have people know who the hell you are. You're going to have some motion. I know that bothers some people. I know that they never wanted you to have that type of motion, but it just is what it is. It is what it is.
Of male identity and status was tied up with being a provider, having a job, doing a good job, coming home. And when folks started losing jobs because of deindustrialization and offshoring, and, you know, obviously this isn't a political show, so we're not going to go down all the reasons that it happened, but it happened. And so then you had a bunch of men suddenly feeling lost because their identity had been so wrapped up in that one thing, which was being a provider. And so part of what we have to do is, as men, take responsibility for figuring out how to talk about and share feelings and cultivate relationships and friendships. But as a society, we also have to make sure that men don't feel redundant and don't feel as if there's not a place for them. Yeah. And there are entire communities now where the women are more likely to be employed than the men are. And they have more avenues for supporting their families. Yeah. And that is something that no matter how much talk you engage in, if guys are feeling left out and not respected, then they're going to act some kind of way, and they're also going to pass that on to their sons. And we're making huge generalizations because in every community there are going to be exceptions. Yeah.
But before we close this out, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask.
We don't yet know what things are going to be like for Austin and Aaron because they're still on the come up. But I do think this idea of men, there are many different ways of being a good, strong, successful, happy man. I think that's something that young people are more open to and recognize. And so that's promising. And we see it, when we talk to Millie and Sasha and their friends. I think that what we need to do in order to take advantage of that is to, as a society, as communities, recognize that this kind of transition from the old models that you and I, Craig, grew up on. Just like you said, you took a lot of good stuff from your dad, but then there were some modifications that just had to be made, either because of blind spots, limits, lack of resource, what have you.
The times.
Where we joke that, talking to Millie and Sasha, sometimes they go out with their friends and, they're in a group and the guy's got crocodile arms, Yeah. It's like...
Not picking up the check.
Not picking up the check. And it's like, okay.
I'm going to play it again.
And, you know, they're in a group and the guy's got crocodile arms, you know?
Yeah.
It's like...
Not picking up the check.
Not picking up the check. And it's like, okay, you don't have to pick it up all the time. But if you're never picking it up,
right,
that's a problem.
Says something about you.
If you're never opening a door or pulling out a chair, because that's just common courtesy. That's just being kind, right?
Kindness.
So for those of you who do not have sons, so Emma, we are rooting for you because those of us with daughters,
we need good men.
We've got to have good guys out there, not necessarily to get married, but to make sure that what we're learning, I think, is that when we don't think about boys and just assume they're going to be okay because they've been running the world and, you know, they've got all the advantages relative to the girls, and all of which has historically been true in all kinds of ways. But precisely because of that, if you're not thinking about what's happening to boys and how are they being raised, then that can actually hurt women. And I would argue that some of the broad political trends we've seen, not just in this country, but around the world, have to do with this sense of, you know, boys, men not feeling as if they are seen, feeling as if they count. Mm-hmm. And that then makes them more interested in appeals by folks who say, you know what, the reason you don't feel respected is because women have been doing this or this group.
No, go ahead and say what my slogan is, Obama. I know you watch, big dog. You know, listen, daycare owners. I'm not going to curse. I'm just going to say the words. You know what he wanted to say?
The reason you don't feel by folks who say, you know what, the reason.
Nope. What she was going to say was, F your feelings. Say it, oh. Say it, oh. Then you turn to people online that come and say, you know what? He caught himself. You know what he really wanted to say. You know what he would have said behind closed doors. Then you start listening to people that say, F your feelings. Say it, oh. Say my slogan. Say my slogan. Slay my slogan, dog. That's what you wanted to say. I know you wanted to say it.
And that then makes them more interested in appeals by folks who say, you know what, the reason you don't feel respected is because women have been doing this, or this group has been doing this, or that group's been doing this, and that is not that's not a healthy place to be. And
I believe that the Obamas had a F around and find out moment during this past election also. I believe they had a mess around and find out moment during this last election. When we started to revolt and we said, I can't believe that you're going to sit here and tell us that the reason that we not voting for Kamala Harris is because we misogynistic against women. And then Michelle Obama turned around and said, you know, guys, because let's remember, I don't know if y'all remember, but I made a lot of Fox News appearances and I spoke specifically about Obama. And not only did I speak about Obama, I spoke about Michelle and I addressed those specific issues, and it went viral. It went viral. It went viral. It went viral on every single platform, including X, formerly known as Twitter, TikTok, and all of that. And so I addressed it. And they said, Anton, what do you think on behalf of black men about what Obama said and what Michelle Obama is saying? And I said that it's unfortunate that we are listening to these people telling each other to go against the men that's in their households, and they're telling them that they need to vote a certain type of way. And then after that broadcast, another 100,000 subscribers came on the YouTube. So you can't tell me, listen, when the opportunity presented itself, I was there for the pickings and I held back zero. I maybe didn't cuss, but I held back nothing in expressing the importance of them missing the men in the black community and why men are starting to turn back to masculinity because they no longer were subjecting themselves to being told what to do when it came to this election or anything for that matter. anything, and it went haywire. And all of the political pundits and all of the people was reaching out to me and all of that other type of stuff. And yes, and I was going to make the most of it. And I spoke very fervently of it. Very fervently. 100%. So, I know that they paying attention. I know that they see it. It's hard to ignore it because you can't control the internet. You can't control it. You can't control it. You can't tell people what they can and can't do. And I'm glad that they now finally starting to have these conversations because the Democrat Party has been asleep at the wheel for a long time.